So I thought we'd start kind of frame this up by a lot of contractors, when they look at their bank account, they realize they're not making enough money. We talked about this in a previous video. They realize they're not making enough money. They don't know how much of that money is theirs. How do they start to narrow down where they're losing money and how they can kind of increase their profitability as a company overall?
Yeah. It's super common and kind of unfortunate, but I'm surprised, and maybe not as much anymore, but I think the average contractor would be surprised how many people are successful, look successful. And when you lift the hood up and you look at what's underneath, they literally have no idea what's working or what's not working in their business. It's driven by luck, good fortune, or the fact that they've been spending money they don't have and they don't realize it. And so the kind of one of the big things to get a hold of there is job costing. That's one of the first kind of dragons you have to slay. Broad picture, make sure you have all your costs in there, right? Making sure that you're using your company bank account, your company credit card. You're not buying stuff with your personal card and then transferring money over, stuff like that. The next thing down is you want to get and look at making sure everything's categorized correctly. And then more specifically than that, you want to make sure everything's going to the proper job. And then for commercial guys, they'll understand that from there, you want to make sure that not only is everything going to the proper job, but the proper CSI division, so you can make sure you're managing your budgets well within each project. But job costing, it doesn't really make sense to manage a budget inside a project if you don't know what cost went to that project in the first place. So job costing is a super important part of that. And it's just making sure that you're assigning every transaction to the specific job that it goes to. I know that can sound easier than it is in reality sometimes if you go to the store and you're buying things for a couple different projects, or you don't know how everything should be assigned. Accountants are used to this sort of thing. So if you have a good partner that's construction specific, like we talked about last time, they know how to handle that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really just making sure that everything is categorized to the job so that you can know whether you're making money or not on that specific project. And then, like we talked about, you can even further manage it down to the specific budget item. But kind of the first step is understanding if you're making money or if you're not making money. And a lot of people will say, my projects make money. Like, great. How do you know that? Usually there's two answers. One, I always make sure they make money. I estimate them to make money. Okay. Well, that's great. You're talking about the difference between kind of in an ideal world where there's rainbows and unicorns, what you planned on happening. And then there's the actual world with delays in permitting, weather delays, restocking fees because the vendor sent out the wrong stuff and they're not going to eat the difference and stuff like that. And so what typically I see happening is, as a project manager or an owner, you get into a project and at the early stages, project management, you would call it the buyout phase. I kind of call it finding out what the estimator forgot to put in the budget phase. And if you don't have a really clear scope of work, like, you're probably going to consider making some concessions and just eating a lot of these costs, right? And so that first argument of, well, I estimated it to be profitable, that goes out the window right there. Right? Sure, you estimated it to be profitable. As soon as that project starts, you're making a series of concessions in your head of, what you can keep, what you can eat, so you don't have to go to the client for the third time that week to tell them you missed something. And then there's the cost plus side, and that is really straightforward as well, because if you're not job costing, not only are you not getting the profit on that scope of work or those materials or whatever, but you're eating the cost of it as well. And, for a lot of commercial guys, if you're doing tenant improvement or other things like that, you may have, cost plus work. When you're doing that cost plus work, if you're not capturing all of the costs that go to that project, you're literally paying for those materials, for that, for the subcontractor, whatever, for the equipment rental, out of your overhead budget. And, obviously if you're trying to run a profitable company and then you're funding your client's project with your profit, that's not going to work very well.
Talk to me a little bit about how a work in progress report plays into job costing.
Yeah. So that's another big component. And if you've ever been on a commercial project and they're asking you for either a bid bond or a performance bond, you're very familiar with work in progress. And the reason that they're asking for that is that most construction companies don't do earned revenue properly. And bonding companies figured this out. And since they are on the hook for if you mess up, they have a very vested interest in knowing your financials a lot of times better than you do. And so they're asking for your profit and loss, your balance sheet, all of that stuff. And then they're going to ask for your work in progress schedule, because what they're doing is they're doing their own calculation of your earned revenue. So they want to know how much of that money, this is the question we talked about last time, how much of that money in your bank account is yours? Well, the bonding company is really interested in the answer to that question too, before they go on the hook for how well you're going to do, or if you're going to be able to finish this project. You just simply can't perform those reports without job costing. You can know a lot of the key components of it. You know how much the project is supposed to be. You probably know how much money you've taken in on the project from the client. You know what you planned to spend on the project, right? But that key component of what you've spent to date, if you're not doing job costing, that's not available. And I can tell you right now, bonding companies just will not touch you. Hey, it looks like you're a good guy. You're doing good work. There's no way we're going to give you a performance bond because you don't have any information to give us, essentially. So for your business, I mean, in an ideal world, I would hope that this is true, is that you're trying to make it as profitable as possible, right? You're trying to grow your business. We talked about last time how, you can grow profit. You can also grow the value of your business. You do need profit to grow the value of your business. You can't, if you're just spending money and not taking more money in, it's going to be really hard to grow the value of the business. So that is a component of it. It's kind of the first thing, and it is the thing that's more forward in everyone's mind. And so if that's your goal, you really, as a business owner, you need to hit that from a couple different angles, right? We talked last time about if your profitability is off, you're either cutting expenses or you're raising prices, right? And those things can happen in a couple ways. Like one, like cutting expenses, you may be saying like, well, maybe we don't need to rent this office, maybe we need a smaller office, or it may be something like we don't need this many vehicles, we can sell some of them. It could be that you look at your projects and you say, okay, well, if you're doing job costing well, now you can look at the performance of each project manager. Who's staying on budget? If your gross profit across your company is 38%, and you have project manager A whose jobs are coming in at an average of 42%, you have project manager B whose jobs are coming in at an average of 31%, well, now you need to have a performance conversation with project manager B, and that's your job as an owner, right? But you don't have that information if you're not job costing. The other aspect is making sure that you are pursuing the jobs that are profitable, right? So if you look at across your jobs that you've been doing, and let's say that, you're a commercial GC, you have a good relationship with one developer, or you have a good relationship with one franchise or something like that, and you end up doing a lot of, Arby's or AutoZones or whatever across the country for this GC, and then you look at your profit and loss for those jobs and you're thinking, you know what, I'm not making as much money as I am on these other jobs that are closer to home, or I'm not making as much money as I am when I'm doing tenant improvements or whatever the case, right? So now you're looking at making strategic decisions based on who you partner with, what sort of jobs you're pursuing, even, when it comes down to marketing money, where are you spending your marketing dollars? Who are you trying to get in front of to pitch your services as a general contractor? And those should all be decisions that are driven by understanding really well what jobs are profitable, what jobs are not. They say the riches are in the niches, right? Meaning that kind of the thing that you can figure out that you're really good at, the more you can do that thing, the more money you're going to make, because you end up solving a specific problem for a specific person. And that's always more valuable than, think of like the faraway example or alternative would be like chucking a truck. Like he's got some tools and he can kind of do everything, if you have that guy as one of your subcontractors, I promise you don't pay him as much as we do HVAC in existing commercial spaces subcontractor, right?
Mm-hmm.
That guy gets paid way more per hour for his work than Chuck does in
Mm-hmm.
his pickup. So, understanding that and applying it to your own business and making sure that you're pursuing the things that are making you money is incredibly important. I would argue it's a responsibility of an owner. And you don't have the right information to work with if you're not doing real job costing,
Right.
not, oh, I think it's going to work out job costing, but real on paper, knowing what the numbers are at the end of the day.
How should they start going about this process of getting a handle on their job costing? Like, how do they start to get this on paper so that they can go off of actual data?
Yeah. The answer isn't terribly different than the answer we had last time, right? Get construction specific software, accountants, CPAs, whatever, right? And so you're going to be really hard pressed to get the answers you need without construction specific accounting software. And so if you don't have a place where you can enter the job, or you don't have a place that you can enter the, even later as you get more detailed, the cost code, things like that, or the CSI division, then you're not using the right software. And then if that isn't linked to, some sort of way to verify that with your bank account, rather than just being a pile of receipts in a spreadsheet, I see so many people do that. It doesn't work, right? Because that gets back to, you have to go through that data validation process of accounting. So there's data entry, data validation, and analysis. In accounting, data entry is making sure you get the data in there. You can do that through anything. But really, when you come to the accounting specific or construction specific accounting platforms, now you're looking at data validation, where you're saying, okay, I know this transaction occurred. Or, what happens all the time is, like, this transaction occurred that we don't have any records for, right? How many times does that happen? How many receipts are sitting in the cup holder of your superintendent right now, right? There's so many transactions that occurred because you're doing the data validation, and you're looking at what came through the bank or credit card or whatever. What transactions occurred that you don't have information for, and then you need to go track down that so you can get it in the system and get that data entry done for that. And then you can get to the analysis part, which is looking at, okay, what am I making on these projects? How does that change my behavior or steer my decision making?
It was great talking to you today, Luke. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Hopefully we'll talk soon.